On a beautiful beach, Ethan and Ryan's gay wedding promises to be the happiest day of their lives. But behind the smiles and blessings, Ethan's younger brother, Chris, is drowning in a forbidden feeling of fierce love for his brother. As the wedding day approaches, Chris's long-suppressed feelings explode, leading to an unexpected tragedy that turns Ethan's happiest day into an unforgivable nightmare. Ethan and Chris Morgan grew up in a cozy home in a small California town. That home, filled with warm memories of family meals and movie nights, was where Ethan and Chris developed a deep brotherly bond. From an early age, Ethan was a favorite. With his bright eyes and radiant smile, Ethan attracted not only the attention of his family but also the entire neighborhood. He had a natural talent for acting, often dragging Chris into his make-believe games. Ethan was always the center of attention, and this gradually created a distance between the two brothers that Chris could never overcome. Chris, 2 years younger than Ethan, followed Ethan around like a shadow. From the very beginning, Chris admired Ethan not only for his talent but also for the confidence and demeanor he exuded. Ethan was not only a big brother but also an idol, an inspiration, and someone Chris always wanted to be close to. To Chris, Ethan is the epitome of perfection, a brother he always wanted to be like. And feeling accepted and loved by Ethan becomes a huge driving force in his life. From the very beginning, Ethan was the leader, the big brother who protected Chris in every situation. Whenever someone bullied Chris at school, Ethan was always the first to stand up for his younger brother, making Chris feel safe and loved. That feeling of being protected further increased the special feelings Chris had for Ethan. For Chris, Ethan was a symbol of strength and was set place, someone he always admired and wanted to be close to. However, when Ethan began to shine with his talent, Chris gradually felt abandoned. When Ethan participated in school plays, he quickly became the star of the show, making the whole school and even the small town know his name. Chris, although proud of Ethan, felt himself being pushed further and further away. He always stood in the dark, watching Ethan shine, and a feeling of jealousy began to arise in his heart when he saw everyone only focusing on praising Ethan. Chris' feelings for Ethan grow beyond admiration and into something more complicated. Every late afternoon after school, when Ethan and Chris walk around town together, Chris feels a strange happiness at being with his brother, but at the same time, he feels an emptiness, as if he can never reach the bright light that Ethan radiates. Chris can't explain this feeling, a mixture of brotherly love, admiration, and a forbidden love that he can't control. When Ethan leaves his small town to pursue an acting career in Los Angeles, Chris feels like he's lost a big part of his life. Ethan's letters and calls, though affectionate, can't fill the void his absence leaves in Chris. Chris begins to feel like an outsider, left behind as Ethan moves on to new successes. Chris' feelings for Ethan gradually turned into an obsession. Memories of warm afternoons together, imaginary childhood games, and moments when Ethan protected him from bullies, all of these became haunting images in Chris's mind. Chris tried to find his own path, choosing to pursue a music career where he could express his truest feelings. Music became the only place where Chris could express the loneliness and pain that he had hidden for so many years. But even in music, Chris could not escape Ethan's huge shadow. Every time he saw Ethan on the media, Chris felt an indescribable bitterness. He felt like he no longer belonged to his brother's world, and the gap between them grew wider. While Chris tried to find his own way, Ethan's life took a new turn when he met Ryan Thompson at a charity fundraising event in Los Angeles. Ryan, a successful tech entrepreneur, had a charming demeanor and a warm smile, and quickly caught Ethan's attention. From the very first moment, there was a special connection between them. Ryan is drawn to Ethan's sincerity and beauty, while Ethan feels that Ryan brings him a sense of peace that he has never found in anyone else. That meeting was not only the beginning of a relationship, but also an event that changed both of their lives. They started dating, and soon their relationship became the focus of attention of the media and the legged community. However, Ethan and Ryan's path to happiness was not easy. Initially, their love faced much opposition from both families and those around them. Many people did not accept the two men loving each other, believing that this relationship went against traditional values. Ryan's family, especially his parents, expressed concern and strong opposition. They feared that this relationship would affect Ryan's image and career as a successful businessman. Criticism came not only from the family but also from both of their colleagues and friends, who were worried that Ethan and Ryan would face difficulties and discrimination in society. Scrutinizing glances, whispers behind their backs, and even threats have become a part of their daily lives. Ethan and Ryan went through difficult times, sometimes feeling isolated and lost in society. There were long nights when they faced their fears, wondering if their love was strong enough to overcome these obstacles. But instead of retreating, they decided to face every challenge with courage, and sincerity in love. Ethan and Ryan understood that their love was not just about them, but also about standing up and asserting their right to love, the right to be true to themselves. They talked frankly with their family, persistently explaining and convincing them that this love was real and worthy of respect. Gradually, Ethan and Ryan's sincerity and determination made their family reconsider. Ryan's parents, although initially very stubborn, eventually understood that their son's happiness was the most important thing. They began to accept and even support Ryan and Ethan's relationship, although they were still confused. In addition, they also constantly fight against social judgment. Ethan and Ryan decided to make their relationship public, not to seek attention but to send a strong message: love has no limits, and they will not let anyone stop them. Their photos appeared in major magazines, their love story was told on television, and they became an inspiration to many people. Their relationship gradually received support from the lesbian community and those who support equal rights. Ethan and Ryan seemed to have found each other at the right time, when both were ready to open their hearts to love and build a bright future together. Together, they overcame criticism and scrutiny to affirm that their love is real and worthy of respect. Their love has become a symbol of resilience and courage, affirming that love knows no gender and that everyone deserves to be loved and to live their true selves. Chris, who once admired Ethan so much, now feels like he is completely pushed out of his brother's life. Every time he sees Ethan and Ryan together in the media, Chris's heart aches. Jealousy and the pain of being abandoned eat away at his mind. Chris cannot accept Ethan belonging to someone else, and that makes his feelings for Ethan more complicated and dangerous. Ethan and Ryan's relationship is not just love, but also develops into a long-term commitment. After many years together, experiencing both joy and challenges, Ryan decides to propose to Ethan. It is a memorable moment, held at a private party with the presence of his closest friends. When Ryan kneels before Ethan, he not only gives Ethan a ring, but also gives him his life. Ethan, with tears glistening in the corners of his eyes, cannot hide his happiness. He accepted the proposal to applause and emotional tears from everyone around. The event became big news, covered in websites and magazines, further cementing their status as a powerful and admired couple in the lesbian community. But behind the smiles and the aura of love, Chris only felt himself being pushed further and further away from Ethan's life. Every time he thought about Ethan forever belonging to Ryan, Chris felt like he was losing the most precious thing in his life. The emptiness in his heart grew bigger and bigger, to the point that he no longer recognized himself. Every moment, the love he had for Ethan gradually turned into a painful obsession, a hidden pain that he could not share with anyone. One evening after Ryan proposed to Ethan, Chris went to see his brother in Ethan's apartment. In the cozy space of the room, with the soft light shining on Ethan's face, Chris tried to find the words to express his feelings. He spent many sleepless nights thinking about this moment, wondering if he had the courage to say the things he had buried for so long. The feeling of being pushed out of Ethan's life seemed to grow bigger and bigger, suffocating his heart. Chris sat down next to Ethan, his eyes fixed on his brother with a rare seriousness. In that moment, all the restraint he had held on to seemed to burst. "Ethan," Chris began, his voice strained, as if each word carried an unbearable burden. "I've always admired you. But it's not just any admiration. You're the only one I can open up to, the one I want to be with." Forever. Chris's heart pounded in his chest, each beat a reminder that he was straying too far from what he should be feeling. He knew that these words could shatter everything, but he also knew that if he didn't say them, he would never be able to escape this torment. Every emotion, from love to jealousy, from admiration to pain, was woven into his heart, creating a mess that he couldn't control. Ethan, still in the ecstasy of the proposal, smiled and placed his hand on Chris's shoulder. To Ethan, Chris's words were simply the admiration of a younger brother for his older brother. "I love you too. Chris, you're my little brother, the one I want to protect and care for." But to Chris, those words were like a sharp knife stabbing into his heart. He had hoped, even if only a little, that Ethan could understand his true feelings. But Ethan's warm eyes and smile only made him realize that Ethan could never return those feelings. Chris's eyes turned sad as he realized that Ethan didn't understand the true meaning of his words. "You know," Chris said softly, his voice breaking. He felt like he was lost, with nowhere to go, when his love for Ethan was now just a dream that would never come true. Ethan, in his innocence and happiness, did not realize the pain that was silently rising in Chris's heart. For Ethan, it was just a normal moment between the two brothers, but for Chris, It was the end of a dream he had long cherished. His feelings were rejected without Ethan's knowledge, causing Chris to sink deeper into obsession and despair. Ethan and Ryan's wedding day was meticulously planned, expected to be one of the most memorable events of the year. Everything was prepared perfectly, from the flower decorations to the guests of honor. However, as the big day approached, Chris's obsession reached its peak. He knew that the ceremony would not end the way everyone expected, and in his heart, a devastating decision was formed. Ethan and Ryan's long-awaited wedding day took place in the beautiful setting of a seaside garden. The gentle afternoon sunlight shone down on the exquisitely decorated garden, creating a space filled with warmth and romance. Colorful flowers lined the path leading to the wedding hall, where all the loved ones gathered to witness the couple's momentous moment. Ethan and Ryan walked out, hand in hand, filled with happiness and love. They entered the wedding hall, amidst applause and admiring gazes. Everything seemed perfect, from the bright smile on Ethan's face to the pride in Ryan's eyes. The guests could not hide their joy at seeing the happy couple, and all were ready to bless them on this special day. But in the crowd, one person stood silently with eyes filled with conflict and pain. Ethan's younger brother, Chris, watched from afar every step of his brother and his partner. The feeling of jealousy, loneliness, and the pain of being abandoned grew inside Chris every smile. Every touch between Ethan and Ryan was like a knife piercing deep into his heart, igniting the dark emotions he had tried to suppress for so long. As Ethan looked into Ryan's eyes with love and sincerity, Chris felt like he was being pushed to the edge of a life he could never belong to. Everything he longed for, everything he felt for Ethan became meaningless in that moment. The pain, the helplessness, and the unrequited love made him feel like he was falling into a bottomless abyss. His love for Ethan, which he once thought was the only driving force in his life, was now just an obsession, an incurable pain. The ceremony took place and the tension increased. The atmosphere was filled with warmth and love. The priest solemnly stood at the front of the altar, leading the couple through the traditional rituals. Ethan and Ryan looked at each other with eyes full of love, preparing to exchange vows, promising to be together forever. Everything went according to plan, from the blessings to the happy smiles of the couple. But no one realized the tension was gradually rising as Chris stood there, his eyes never leaving Ethan. Chris felt like he was being pushed out of Ethan's world, where he once felt safe and loved. The love he had for Ethan had long since turned into an obsession, an unquenchable pain. Every moment of the ceremony seemed to only deepen the despair in his heart. The blessings from those around him only added salt to his wounds. Inside Chris, a storm of emotions was churning, growing more and more uncontrollable. Every word the priest said, every smile from the guests, every moment Ethan and Ryan exchanged loving glances, all seemed foreign and painful to Chris. He felt like he was on the sidelines of Ethan's life, no longer having a place, no longer having any meaning. This feeling of helplessness and despair drove Chris deeper into the obsession of unrequited love. He knew that this ceremony would mark the end of all the hope he had ever cherished. When the priest invited the close relatives to give a few words of blessing to the couple, the atmosphere became warmer and more emotional than ever. One by one, people stepped up, shared their memories, and sent their best wishes. But when it was Chris's turn to speak, the atmosphere began to become tense. Chris stepped up to the podium with trembling hands, his eyes never leaving Ethan. Everyone waited in silence. No one knew that a terrible internal war was taking place inside Chris. Chris began to talk about his feelings for Ethan, about his childhood memories, about how he always felt abandoned and lost in his brother's huge shadow. He expressed that his love for Ethan was not just brotherly love, but a deep and painful love. A love that he knew he could never receive in return. He felt like everything in life had turned its back on him, and Ethan's love for Ryan was the final stab that cut all the hope in his heart. Chris's words made the whole garden fall into silence. Ethan did not understand why Chris said these things, and even less did he realize the despair that was rising in his brother's heart. For Chris, this was the first and last time he could tell the truth, but the truth did not bring him relief, but only made him sink deeper into pain and despair. In a tense moment, Chris pulled out a small gun from his jacket that he had hidden. The sight of the gun silenced everyone in the garden. The horrified screams of a few guests broke the silence. Chris pointed the gun at Ethan, his hands shaking, but his eyes flashed with a crazy determination. Ethan was stunned, his eyes wide open in horror, unable to believe what he was witnessing. Ryan immediately rushed forward, standing in front of Ethan facing Chris's gun. This action was not only a reflex to protect the person he loved, but also a strong affirmation that the love between him and Ethan could not be broken. Both of them, Ethan and Ryan, stood facing Chris, their eyes filled with determination and love, ready to face any danger to protect each other. That moment was like a fatal punch to Chris's heart. All the feelings, pain, and obsession that he had suppressed for so long suddenly burst out. Chris realized that he had never truly belonged to Ethan's world, that his love was just a dream that would never come true. He felt like he had lost everything, not only Ethan but also himself. In a moment of uncontrollable emotions, Chris could no longer bear the pain and despair that was invading his soul. He pointed the gun at Ethan, but Ryan's pained eyes, the despair in Ethan's eyes, made him realize that he could not hurt them. Instead, Chris slowly raised the gun to his head, his eyes blurred with tears. Memories of the painful, unrequited love flooded back, mingling with the unbearable pain, turning his last moment into an explosion of all the pent-up emotions. In front of everyone, Chris pulled the trigger, ending his life in a final act of despair. The gunshot rang out in the air, tearing apart the peaceful atmosphere of the garden, leaving behind an endless and unhealable void. Chris's body collapsed to the ground, blood from the wounds spreading across the ground, ending a story full of tragedy and indelible pain. Ethan and Ryan stood there, stunned and horrified by the scene that had just unfolded, unable to believe what they had just witnessed. The whole garden fell into a deadly silence as everyone around them froze in horror and shock. The pain, the loss was too great for Ethan to accept. The guilt and loss seemed to have broken his heart. The image of Chris collapsing before him would forever haunt him, like a scar that would never fade in Ethan's soul.